Tonight, the Fifth Estate investigates the case of the death of the Patel family. The family of 4 Indian migrants died on a frigid Manitoba night trying to cross the border on foot into the United States. The RCMP gave the show exclusive new details about the investigation, and the show has uncovered a potential new lead that could help understand what happened to the Patels. Stephen D'Souza is the co-host of the Fifth Estate and joins us now from Toronto. Thanks for making some time tonight.
My pleasure, Riley. Thank you.
So take me back to the 19th of January and what happened to the Patel family.
You know, yeah, the image of the Patel family is burned into people's mind. Jagdish Patel and his wife Vishali, as well as their children, 11-year-old Vahangi and 3-year-old Dharmak, their young son. And what we believe is that human smugglers essentially brought them to the border at that spot just east of Emerson and told them to walk across towards the U.S. But that night was terrible. The weather was terrible even by Manitoba standards. A lot of people said that lived there, locals, said they wouldn't have gone out that night. It was minus 35. A storm had just passed through. And the next morning on the U.S. side, Border Patrol arrested a man driving a 15-seat passenger van, and they found 7 Indian migrants. But one of the migrants was carrying a backpack with toddler supplies, and they realized that none of those migrants had a toddler. So that's when they went back out and discovered the bodies of the Patel family. And as you mentioned, we had a chance to speak with the RCMP, and they spoke about the discovery. Take a listen to Sergeant Gary Bird from Manitoba RCMP.
Simply put, the weather that night that the Patel family attempted to cross into the United States was treacherous. The clothing that they were wearing when they were found deceased was winter clothing. However, it was winter clothing I may consider to wear in minus 5 degrees Celsius shoveling a driveway. In no way were they prepared clothing-wise to attempt to make that journey. Pitch black, high winds, 0 visibility in very, very cold conditions would be extremely difficult for a person wearing proper clothing with experience in the weather.
Now, Riley, the migrants who did make it across told authorities that they'd been wandering for about 11 hours, when in reality, they'd only traveled about 1 kilometer.
So, Stephen, what have you learned in your investigation?
It's interesting. The RCMP are still coming up against a lot of roadblocks, especially in reconstructing the timeline of the family's journey. And we can show you exclusive video that the Fifth Estate obtained showing the Patel family arriving in Toronto on January 12th at Pearson Airport. The family likely had no idea what was to come in the days ahead. And what we know from the RCMP is that they were picked up by an individual at the airport and taken to a hotel in the Greater Toronto area. From there, they stayed at a private residence as well as at another hotel. But from January 15th to the 18th and 19th, when their bodies were found, there's still a black hole in the RCMP's timeline. They still don't know, even now, 9 months later, how the family got from the Greater Toronto area to the Manitoba border. And one of the big questions a lot of people in Winnipeg had at the time was did they stay with anybody in Winnipeg? Did they transit through here? And police are still having a hard time trying to determine that, but it appears they may have traveled directly from Toronto right to that spot on the border.
So, Stephen, do we know why they wanted to get to the U.S. in the first place? Why not just immigrate to Canada? Yeah,
that's the obvious first question that so many people were asking when this first happened. And when we went to India, we went to the state of Gujarat, where the Patel family is from, and Gujarat has a long history of sending people to the U.S. and to Canada, but there, and especially in the village that they're from, there's the real pull to go to the U.S., to live the American dream, and they've seen generations before them go, and they see on social media posts of people's lifestyle, whether it's the way it is or exaggerated perhaps, and they also see the money coming back, the American dollars being sent back to the villages, and so there's a big draw there. They want to give their kids a better opportunity. And the family there we spoke to, Jagdish Patel's parents, said they knew that Jagdish wanted to take the family to Canada for better opportunities. They just didn't know that he was going to try to sneak into the U.S. And because it's so hard to go legally now into the U.S., even if you have family to sponsor you, there's this parallel immigration system essentially set up by human smugglers that gives them what they think is an easy path, but is full of risk.
You've learned about a possible suspect. Tell us what you've learned about that.
That's right. In our research, we came across a convicted fraudster operating in the west coast of the United States, and he's under arrest, charged with operating a human smuggling ring in Blaine, Washington, along the BC border. His name is Rajinder Pal Singh. And in January, around the same time the Patel family was being moved through Canada, he was under surveillance by U.S. authorities, and he's caught talking about a border crackdown where Border Patrol in Blaine, Washington is cracking down on that section of the border, arresting a number of Indian migrants crossing from Canada into the U.S. And so he's recorded as saying, look, they know where these people are coming from. If we want to keep doing this work, talking about human smuggling operations, if we want to keep doing this work, then we have to do it from Winnipeg. He talks about having drivers in Toronto to move people. He talks about needing places in Canada for people to stay before they're smuggled into the U.S. And so as the Patels are being moved through Canada, here's an accused human smuggler on the West Coast talking about moving people through Winnipeg. Now, there's no direct evidence linking him to the Patels, but the RCMP have traveled to Blaine, Washington to see if there is any connection. And there is one issue we also came up with in our investigation, in that the RCMP in Manitoba only started looking at him in the late summer, long after he had been arrested and his charges became public. But we've learned that BC RCMP knew about the investigation in the US long before, because he had been under surveillance for 4 years, had made the comments in January. So it appears that not all sides were talking to each other and not all sides were communicating. And so there's serious questions being asked about whether perhaps if police had acted on him sooner, it may have impacted the Patel's journey.
Stephen, great work from you and the team on this one. Looking forward to watching that full investigation tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Riley.
You can watch the full Fifth Estate investigation, Death at the Border, tonight at 9 p.m. on CBC television. You can also stream it anytime on CBC Gem.